Hello Year 9 and all students of Nazi Germany. I'm here in very sunny and hot and busy Munich to discuss the Beer Hall Putsch. One of the key events in the rise of Adolf Hitler happened here, and I'm actually in a place called Odeonplatz, which is where one of the locations of the group of Nazis met. By the summer of 1923, the Weimar Republic, Germany's fledgling democracy, was in a bad place. Hyperinflation was rife and through the roof, and people couldn't afford to buy things. The country was still suffering from the troubles of World War I, and there was a real bitterness amongst ordinary Germans about what they called the November criminals, those who had signed the armistice and most importantly had signed the Treaty of Versailles, where Germany had to take all the blame for the First World War. And in particular, one of the most bitter people was Adolf Hitler, who had served in the First World War. And he came back after the war here to Munich and was actually sent on a spy mission to infiltrate the German Workers' Party, but found that he agreed with them so much that eventually he joined their ranks and became their leader. And he would make lots and lots of rousing speeches at the beer halls. I'm now at a busy intersection in the south of Munich, right by this theatre complex here. In November of 1923, this was the site of the Burger Beer Keller, the beer hall in which Hitler held the Beer Hall Putsch. He had managed to convene a big meeting of all his supporters, and he had convinced somehow the three leaders of Bavaria, von Kahr and others, to meet him here, and essentially he held them hostage. He held them hostage until they agreed to meet his demands that he becomes leader of Bavaria and they rule in a national socialist way. Initially, they were sort of played him on a little bit, and the whole evening dragged on a little bit, really. And the problem was that Hitler's supporters got more and more drunk. It was a beer hall after all. And it wasn't until about sort of 3 a.m. that Hitler was able to convince the triumvirate, as they're known, the three key leaders of Bavaria, to agree to his terms. But by then things weren't great. Also, Hitler did another mistake. He decided to just leave the beer hall for a moment to sort something else out elsewhere. And that time the three leaders managed to convince others within the Nazi parties to let them just leave and tell their wives, etc., where they are. But of course what the triumvirate did was they alerted the police, alerted the authorities to come and stop the putsch. And so what would happen then is the police turn up. So the Nazis then decided to march down to Marienplatz, where we just were, try to gather more and more support. But as I say, the supporters were a bit bedraggled, a bit drunk, and the leaders were a bit rudderless, and until they eventually ended up at the Odeonplatz. By the morning of the 9th of November, the Nazis had made it here to the Odeonplatz, just north of the main old city of Munich, and they had gone up this road here, the Residenzstrasse. By the morning, they were a bit bedraggled, perhaps a bit hungover from their time in the beer hall, and a little bit rudderless, perhaps, losing certain things, miscommunications, etc., etc. And one last military battle, one last gunfight happened here in the Odeonplatz. The Bavarian state troopers had marched up the main road behind me here and had met with the Nazi putschists here in Odeonplatz. And the Nazis put up a futile attempt to seize power, but ultimately it failed, and 16 Nazis died here on this spot. Hitler ran off, was eventually caught and arrested, and went on trial and sent to Landsberg prison. Several other Nazis were imprisoned here, and the Nazi party seemed at this point to be no more, with no much future. During the Nazi years, when Hitler eventually takes power in 1933, this became a real centre for Nazi martyrdom, really, because of all the Nazis the 16 Nazis who died here. And this was known as sort of the flag of blood, but they had swastikas draped in red here on this part that survives here now. But it was here that the Munich Beer Hall Putsch ended at Odeonplatz. Now, at this point, it's also worth talking about the date, 9th of November, specifically in German history, because it's known in German history as the Day of Fate, because very many significant events happened on the 9th of November, including the Beer Hall Putsch, but the 1918, the Declaration of the Republic, after the defenestration of the Kaiser, was on 1918, the 9th of November. The 9th of November 1989 was when the Berlin Wall fell and Germany was unified. It started the process of reunification to become one country from east and west. But in 1938, the 9th of November 1938, in the building just behind me, the old town hall of Munich, Joseph Goebbels made a hate-filled speech which started Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass, which saw the first attacks on synagogues and shops associated with Judaism, arguably the start of the Holocaust. So 9th of November, the day of our Beer Hall Putsch, is a very significant event in German history. So what's the legacy of the Beer Hall Putsch? Well, ultimately it was a complete failure. The Nazis were disorganized, chaotic, bad leadership from Adolf Hitler, bad communication. It certainly was not going to anywhere near achieving its aims of overthrowing the Bavarian government and beyond. So complete failure. However, the Nazis do end up in power just 10 years later. Well, one of the main reasons is the Beer Hall Putsch raised the profile of Adolf Hitler. Suddenly he became national and indeed international news. So everyone started to know about him, and more importantly, everyone started to hear and listen to and believe in his key speeches and propaganda. The other key thing is he was sentenced to prison, at Landsberg prison, but before that there was a trial where essentially he used the trial as an opportunity to spout all his theories, and it was hotly reported, etc., etc. And during his time in Landsberg prison, he wrote Mein Kampf, his magnum opus, his book, highlighting all his key ideas. So by the time he emerged from prison after the Beer Hall Putsch, he was globally famous, certainly nationally famous, and in a very strong position to take power in Germany.